Hello, everybody. Welcome to our annual Plan Your Writing Year. I was having some technical difficulties. Welcome to what a crazy time. It's all good. I got it. I figured it out. So welcome, everybody. I did, Beth. So yesterday I was going live on my coffee chat, which happens over at my Sarra Cannon YouTube channel. I go live every Friday. If you ever want to join us, we do a Q&A and we just hang out, and it's just really fun. It's a great community. And I was trying to share my iPad yesterday, and whatever I used to use did not work. So I had to figure it out all over again. And then as soon as I connected my iPad today, like literally 6 minutes ago, it was like, your iPad needs an update to connect. It said it was going to be 10 minutes. I was like, well, I'm just going to say a little prayer that it all works out. It's all going to be good. So it's going to be fine. So welcome to our annual Plan Your Writing schedule for 2023. We have been doing this live stream, I think, since 2018 to plan the 2019 writing year. And we have come a long way since then. So if you're here, welcome. This is going to be really fun. I do have a download for you. If you haven't grabbed it yet, there is a link in the description box here that will tell you exactly where to go. You just click on that link. It'll take you to my ConvertKit landing page. You sign up for my newsletter list and it will automatically send you a confirmation email. When you click that confirmation email, it will download the Sunday Start PDF for you. And then like a minute later, it's going to send you an email that tells you the link to the writing resource library. And that resource library is full of plotting notebooks and writing stuff and just so many fun things. And you'll find a folder in there. I think it's called 2023 Writing Plan or something like that, that has a digital planner for you as well as a PDF planner that you can print. And it comes in Sunday Start or Monday Start, so that for those of you that prefer Monday Start, which I know is most of the world besides the United States and even some of the people here, go ahead and grab those if you don't already have it. Otherwise, if you just don't want to join the mailing list, you don't care about the workbook, that's totally fine too. You just can either listen and absorb, or if you have some kind of notebook and a piece of paper, or you have a Google Calendar or some other kind of paper planner. Since we are, I'm giving away, it's the season of giving away planners on this live stream today too. I am going to give away your choice. I'll choose one winner from the comments today of either a happy planner that is a beautiful 2023 happy planner, or an Erin Condren notebook. For those of you that don't need another planner, you can choose which one you want. So we'll give that away in a little bit. Okay. So thank you for saying that you like my top. I actually wore this shirt during the HB90 kickoff call as well, and I just love it. And it feels very festive and New Year-ish. So we're getting in the mood. So we're going to go through this process with the workbook today. But as I was really sitting down to start thinking about what is it that people really need to hear this year? What is it that we need to do a little bit differently in our planning? And I realized that there's really a step to this Plan Your Writing schedule that we have missed in the past. And it's part of my HB90 planning system, but I know that not everybody plans in that way. And so we're going to start off with this, even though it is not in your notebook. And if you guys would like for me to, of course, I shouldn't put any more on my plate. Is Renee here? No, she's here today. I have not really had enough time off in the last 3 months. We're not going to talk about it. But this is part of the plan is, reflection. So some of what we're going to do is we're going to listen. There she is. I knew she's going to be here. She's like, don't you dare put more on your plate. What I was going to say is, if you would like a copy of these questions, maybe we can write them up and put them in the writing plan notebook for you, because I wish I had put this in here, but we are going to do this. So if you have, Angela, do I need to mom you? Yes, probably yes. what you can do is, if you have your printed planner because you got ready a little bit earlier, or if you have just any kind of notebook or anything around, Word doc if you want to open it up on your computer, or if you have your digital planner, which I have sitting in front of me, at the very back of the digital planner, there is a couple of notes pages. And if you need more notes pages, all you have to do, if you're on an iPad, is just swipe and hold, and it will ask you if you want to add more pages, and you say yes, and it will add more notes pages. So you can write some of this stuff in those notes pages or anywhere that you have. Yay, JD is here too. It's always so good to see like all these names. So many of you, I know that I see you all the time in the Heart Breathings writing community, but also on the coffee chat on Fridays, but also some of you I only see in the comments of my normal YouTube videos, but I don't get to actually interact with you. So M. Winkler says, where can we get the digital version of the planner? So the digital version of the planner is in the HB resource library. It was not there yesterday when I first sent out the email, but it is there now. So if you missed it, we won't go deep into it, but we will just say, due to some unforeseen circumstances, I had to teach myself how to create a digital planner this week. And it was really fun. And now I told Renee that I have created a monster out of myself, because now I have all these ideas of what we can do with digital planners, like a digital plotting workbook, a digital series workbook, all the things. And so I just quickly kind of threw together a digital workbook. And yes, it is a Good Notes version of the writing plan is inside, but there will also be a Good Notes version of our goals planner for 2023. It is coming soon. Rhiannon is here. All my favorite people. I love it. I love it. So good to see you all. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of reflection, and we're going to do a little bit of it in real time. But after this live stream is over, or whenever you start to really think about your plan of what you're going to write next year, I highly encourage you to sit and think about how this past year has gone. And we've never done this in the live stream before. Usually we just say, okay, let's start planning for next year. But the truth is that when we skip the reflection process, we miss some of the most important part of the planning process, which is asking ourselves what didn't work before. Because if we just our way into the next year without reflecting on what went well, what we accomplished, where we got stuck, guess what happens? We end up making the same mistakes. And if you want to, you can leave a little hand raise or a heart emoji in the comments if you have been guilty of this in the past, where you plan your writing year, you have all these amazing like goals that you're going to write this many books or this many words, and you know exactly what your strategy is going to be. And then you go through the year and you don't follow through with it. You, for some reason, aren't able to write as much as you thought. You feel like you're a failure, potentially. This is me, because you feel behind. You don't get it all done. You aren't able, you feel like the math added up. So why aren't you getting as much writing as you thought? And then also, when you start to plan the next year after that, you continue to plan to write just as much as you did last year, if not more. So for example, what I used to always do, and I know I've told this story before, but it's worth a retelling, is yes. Okay. So is that a positivity thing? Because I don't know enough about all the individual strengths, but positivity is number 6 for me, Kelly. And I also feel the same. Yeah, I'm right there. I'm right there. So have you been peeking at my notebook? Hello, Madison. Madison is one of the lovely authors that met up with me in Austin this year, and I just enjoyed that so much. None of us, thank you, Philippa says, you are not a failure. None of us are failures. What ends up happening, though, is that we think we can do more than we can. And because we don't take time to reflect on what went wrong, where we got stuck, when we feel behind, we plan to do more because we're like, okay, I didn't accomplish all the stuff that I was supposed to do last year. So this year I've got to catch up. And so especially if you're writing and you're publishing and you've had a few years, which so many of us have, where you haven't been able to write as much, sometimes it feels like I'm so far behind. Like, just for an example of me, I have a lot of readers, probably less than I had last year, because every year you go without a new release, you lose people, and that's just a part of it. So they're waiting for book 12 of my most popular series. But I also have readers who are waiting on book 4 of a different series, and they're waiting on book 2 of a different series. And then I have all these other ideas that I've been working on or thinking about, and they're all still not come to fruition. So when I start to look at 2023, my natural instinct is to say, well, I have to write book 12, write book 4, finish book 2, and I wanted to start that new series I was going to write. And so I immediately start looking at my calendar, trying to figure out how I can make that wish a reality. When the truth is, it's so much more powerful to step back and look at your time first. Because when we take a list of all the things we need to do and we try to cram them into the schedule, we're not looking at our schedule realistically most of the time. Instead, we're saying to ourselves, well, I can write 5,000 words a day for 30 days in a row. Why not? Like, even if that's not a realistic word count for us, we convince ourselves, if I can write this book in 30 days, everything will change. Anybody? I have definitely been there. If I could just write this one really fast, if I could do this real quick, everything would change. I would get ahead if I could just do this. But when we expect ourselves to just wake up tomorrow as a totally different person with a different set of habits and a different work ethic or a different plotting mechanism, or we just expect if my brain would just cooperate, or if we say, if I was just a better person, or we start to say negative things about ourselves. If I was just more disciplined, if I was just a faster plotter, if I was just more like Sarah, or if I was more like Rhiannon, then I could do this, right? But that is actually not serving anybody. And thank you for the, hand raises and so forth, because I know I'm not alone in this. The real power of planning ahead, though, comes from taking a realistic look at what is the time available to me. And instead of saying, how can I get these 12 things done in this amount of time, which is such a dangerous way to think of it, if we can instead say, what can I realistically get done and still maintain my mental health and my physical health, then we start to get realistic. And you know what? Using terms like ideal is tricky in this type of situation, because when you're already behind, or you are somebody who puts a lot of pressure on yourself, or you're looking at other authors who publish 10 books a year or more, and you start to compare yourself to that, so often we can start to feel like we're not living up to it, right? That we're not good enough, that we're somehow, our worth is tied to that. But the truth is, you are exactly the person and the writer that you need to be. Now, there may be some skills that you need to work on. There may be some planning that you can do to maximize your time. There are always ways that we can improve and grow as individuals. But when we overplan and underestimate how long it's going to take to complete our different projects, we're really not setting ourselves up for the best year ever most of the time. And even if we do set ourselves up for one like best year ever, sometimes we end up at the end of that year so burned out that we can't keep on going. So when we start looking ahead to the next year, I find that one of the most effective ways to do it is to start with reflection of, how did this past year go? Where did I get stuck? And some of those kind of questions we're going to go over in a second. And oh, yay, Wanda says, I received my books. I have been signing books like crazy. I saw Rita Heiderman in the comments. I just signed your books last night. So thank you for that. The negative comments towards my writing and over critiquing every minuscule thing while comparing my writing to others is the writer's tube sector hurts. Oh, in the writer tube sector hurts more than it helps, but I do it anyway. Yeah, so the comparison is really hard. The comparison is really hard. And it's not something that you can just snap your fingers and it's over. What has been helping me with comparison over the years, because I have always been someone who suffers from this. What has helped me with comparison is truly, this sounds a little bit more woo-woo, but just trying to really do some meditation where I say, I know that I am being guided, and I know that I am on my own journey here. And that if I want that big level of success, it is mine for the taking. But my journey doesn't look like anyone else's. And I'm excited for how this is going to unfold. And instead of wasting time comparing myself and feeling like I don't live up, I'm going to step into that future version of myself who already has that life that I'm looking to live. And I'm going to trust her. And I'm going to believe that she is there waiting for me. And that when I get there, I'm going to think, who was I comparing myself to? Look at where I am. I'm so thankful for this. And if I get to a point where I start to compare myself in that way, I try to go back to that meditation and envision that version of myself who is, where I want to be. And I say, okay, she's there. She is me. That is me. I just have to keep taking one step forward toward her. Point myself in the direction. We talk about this a lot in HB90, that once you have that vision of who and what you want to be, that's when you can start walking in that direction as if it is a GPS system that you put in. It's a location you put in. That's future me. That's where I'm heading. And if I can start to trust that, that is where my not needing to compare anyone comes from, because I know I'm on my way. Christina says, what's helped me with comparison is something I learned from Lisa Vino. Look at the success of someone and say, I'll have some of that too, please. I love it. All right. So this is another question I'll address just kind of quickly. So is the future planning course still happening? So I sent out an email a couple of weeks ago about doing a future planning course. However, due to some other unforeseen circumstances that I won't go into, my time kind of got stolen from me to be able to do that. And the only way that I would be able to do that course before the beginning of the year would be to sacrifice my Christmas with my family, and I am not doing it. So that course is not coming right now, but we're going to do some of what we would have done in that course here. And then I'll be talking about it more in my channel, just on my regular channel, in January, and then I'll keep you guys updated. So I'm determined. Most of next week is a vacation for me, and I need it very desperately. So I apologize that course won't be going, but we're going to cover some stuff today. So first things that we're going to do is a little bit of reflection. So if you can pull out a notebook, your notes page in the workbook that's at the very end, if you'd like, and any kind of notebook, anything you need there, that will be great. I'm going to see, I pulled up my Epidemic Sound because I have a subscription there, and I thought if I could pull this up, I don't know if you guys will be able to hear it. Can you hear this if I set this here? Does that come through, or is it weird? I'm waiting for somebody to tell me in the comments. So if you can hear that, I'll turn on a little bit of music while we do some reflection, because I think this part is so important and we really, really need it. Yes, 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 yes. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Loud and clear. Okay, so let's get into this space of really thinking back on the year that we've had in 2022. And I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and I'm going to give you a little bit of time. And in fact, I made this cool little overlay, even though I don't have eCam. I think Rhiannon and Lisa would be proud of me, but I've got to figure out how to pull it up. It's not seamless. It's not seamless. Okay. So here, nope, not that one. Here is my iPad, but I'm going to put this fun little overlay. Isn't that cute? Yay. Okay, so you guys can see my iPad, and I've got my notes page pulled up as well. And so what we will do here is we're going to just do a little bit of journaling or reflection. If you don't feel like actually writing this down, you are free to just think for a moment about this. But as long as you're kind of with us, it's going to be great. Okay, so I will turn on this music and I will turn it down a little bit if it was a little bit too loud. And what we're going to do is I'm going to ask you a question and just write some stuff down. So, how did your writing go in 2022? What's your first thoughts about how you feel about your writing in 2022? And I'll just give you a couple, like a little bit of time. Okay, so next question. If you didn't finish it, just go ahead and write down what the question was and you can continue it afterward. But what would you change if you had an opportunity to change how your writing went this year? What would you change about it? Okay, just a little bit of reflection that you may or may not know. How many writing projects did you finish? Of course, you would know that. Or how many words did you write this year? Did you feel like you wrote every day that you wanted to write? Or did you often not find time to write? So this is more of a reflection of how many words do you think you wrote this year? How many projects did you finish? And was it what you had intended? Okay, another question. If you're just joining us, we are just kind of going through some of these questions. Yeah, if somebody gets a chance to post, like just post the question that I asked, that would be helpful in the chat. I don't have them here in the workbook, just we have 2 more questions to go through and I can post them afterward for you. Last question is, if you got stuck this year, where did you get stuck? Was it plot? Was it fear? Was it something outside your control, like an illness or a move? Where did you get stuck? What held you back if you didn't achieve the words that you hoped? No. Thanks. Good notes. What's happening? Okay, just one more question, and I'll post these in the community tab afterward. What projects do you currently have that you're working on now that you want to continue working on in the new year? Final question. Okay, just a little bit of reflection there, but there's so much more that you can do with this type of reflection work. And I do encourage you, because I know we've got so many people on. I don't want to spend like 40 minutes going through a bunch of questions that aren't in the planner for you, but I will post those questions for you in the community tab after the live is over. Basically, the point of the reflection is to go through and look at, where am I getting stuck? What worked last year and what didn't work? What was it like one time in a million things? Okay. So for example, author Julie Harbison says, I had a baby in July. We put our house on the market in October. So last half of the year has been a whirlwind. Like, this is understandable, right? Congratulations on your new baby and hopefully your new house soon. I moved this year as well. There are so many things that can come up that, hopefully we won't have to deal with again next year, or, that we might not have the same issues or things. Like, I am settled here in this house and I'm hoping to stay here. So I know that that's not necessarily going to be a challenge that I'll have next year. However, a challenge that I had this year that I know I'll continue to have is that if I pack my schedule so busy that I don't have time throughout the day for like fun, and I don't have time in the evenings enough for just kind of play because I'm busy all the time, then I don't have enough creative juice to start thinking of ideas. And it wasn't until later in this year when I started actively working on my creativity and fun, I started actively like forcing myself in a way to stop work at a certain amount of time. Like 5 p.m., I'm going to stop work. I'm going to put my phone down. I'm not going to answer anybody's messages or anything. And I'm going to play with the family. And then my husband was very good about saying, okay, I know you've got some other things that you want to do tonight. Like, you've got that planner, or you've got this other thing, but you need to go play a game. And sometimes when you're hyper-focused or you have all these different goals and things to work on, it can be really difficult to allow yourself to just let go of the stress, especially when you're an indie published author, because man, it's never done. It's never finished. Like it's always something that you could be doing or improving upon. You could be, why don't I have a TikTok account? Maybe I should be working on updating my backlist. Maybe I need a better newsletter. There's so many different things that will pull at our time. And there's literally no way that we're going to get every single thing done. And so it's important to give yourself boundaries. And that was something that I know I'm going to face for next year with everything I have on my plate. And so part of my planning process, as I begin starting to think about what I'm going to plan to write for next year, I have to also think about, how am I going to like get space in my life to start daydreaming again instead of being stressed or busy all the time. And as much as I love Heart Breathings and I love teaching courses, running a YouTube channel, a Etsy shop, and teaching courses with a toddler at home has made it more difficult to find my writing time. So for those of you that work full-time jobs and have families or, other responsibilities, you know what I'm talking about. And so we have to create space for the fun part of the writing as well. So we're going to move to the actual sort of planner. But again, this is something I can add for later, but this kind of goes into, you won't see this in your planner because I added it afterward. One of the other things that I want you to do before we get started with the time element of this workbook or this strategy session is take a moment to take your pencil or whatever you're using and just write down, what are all the steps that you need to take from idea generation to published book. For those of you that are here that are traditionally published, you won't have some of the same like publishing, formatting your book type questions on here. But if you are somebody who is indie publishing, you might have this little list here is for something different, but you might have a list that looks something like, okay, like choose my idea, maybe you plot or index cards. Maybe you don't. Maybe you just write out something about characters. So do it for your own process. And please excuse my handwriting because it's chicken scratch on this iPad. So for me, I choose an idea, I plot and do my index cards, and then I write the draft. And then at that point, I usually have to go back and do more plot. And then I will usually write a second draft, which often includes a lot of rewrites. And then I will go back and I will edit. Then it goes to beta readers. Then I edit again. Then it goes to my like professional editor. And then usually, you know, I edit again and it's usually ready to go. So like make yourself a list of all the processes that you have to go through. So from edit, then it's usually like a cover reveal or release date at that point. Announcement. Some of you may not know your process on some of these things other than the writing. And you might not even know that for sure. And I do apologize. This is so messy, but we're gonna work with it. So after I have a release date announcement, usually I'm gonna send things out to my ARC team. I'm gonna create like teasers or promo stuff, and I'm gonna do, you know, a launch, and then I'm gonna do all my like launch promotions. So once you have that list, that can be helpful. So like, yeah, some people might do book trailers. You might want to, actually, I left it out here. I would format the book over here before I send it to my ARC team. You actually like launch is what I mean by like upload the book and then promote the release. Sometimes I'm also going to like in the promo section, that's going to involve setting up sales for books that are earlier on in the series, you know, all those kinds of things. Yeah, so you could also have cover art in here. Maybe if you are just choosing your idea and you're plotting, maybe sometime in the middle of like writing the draft, you could have that you contact a cover artist somewhere up here. So where does that happen in your process? For me right now, I have covers for like the next 8 books that I'm supposed to be writing. So my cover artists have not heard from me in a while. But if you can get a list of those, because in this little planner that I have created for you guys, I don't actually have in here a list of all those tiny little things. What I have is plot and prep, your rough draft, your edits, and the publishing tasks that you need to do. But one of the things that you might want to do as you begin processing all of these things, Christina says, I have covers for days. Yeah, I'm with you on that. It can be helpful to write out a list of what all those steps are for yourself, because it can be helpful to know what else you have to make time for when you're doing this process. So you have your kind of list, that's your strategy. And before we move to, and Lori says, I have like 20 steps. It is okay. And you can get as granular as you want. You might not get this all done, obviously, while we're here on the live stream, but you can make a note in your notes section to make a list of all the things. I really love this. And this is something that Renee and I kind of have a Kanban board for inside Notion, but she has not been working with me since I published a book. So it's like old stuff and it's updates, like backlist updates and stuff. But a Trello board with a card that lists everything and separate cards for steps with multiple parts to them. If you can create for yourself a spreadsheet or something in a digital planner, or even just a checklist that you refer to that is your publishing steps. If you took Publish and Thrive, you have a download in that course that leads you through every single thing from idea generation to publishing, including getting your ISBNs and everything. And actually, there is a download that I did really, really early on when I started Heart Breathings that is inside the Heart Breathings writing resource that's called like Everything You Need to Know Before You Publish. And it has a list of all the decisions that you need to make and all the things you need to set up before you get started. So that is super, super helpful. Feel free to go grab that from the writing resource library. So let's talk about game board strategy. So the idea of game board strategy is this idea of when X is completed, that's when I start Y. So think of it as dominoes falling over. So when you finish the first step, like you've chosen the idea that you're going to write, what does that then trigger that's next in your process? And I highly recommend when you start thinking about your planning for 2023, if you are in a place where you know you're going to be trying to publish the book, or you know that you're going to be trying to get an agent this year, or you're going to finish a book for the first time, if you can write down the steps that are relevant to you right now for the stage that you're at in your career. Because for some of you, if this is your first novel, it might be that you don't know for sure other than you've got edits coming after you finish your draft. And that's enough. Just put what your current steps are and start understanding that when X is completed, like once I've got my plot and index cards, oops, let me pull this one up. Once this is done, it's going to trigger my time to write the rough draft. And as soon as I get a certain point in the rough draft, now a game board strategy could be as like granular as, so let me say it again for anybody joining. This stuff is not in the planner. I added it afterward when I started really thinking about what I was going to talk about today. So it's not there. I said it earlier, but some people just maybe joined us a little bit late. So, but you have a notes page, so feel free to write it in your notes page. When you've got, like, you could set up a game board strategy that basically says when I'm 50% through my rough draft, that triggers the next domino that falls that says, now I need to contact my editor to get on their schedule. Or it might be that now it's time to start working on my cover art. Maybe when you get to 100% on your rough draft, it's time to go ahead and do a cover reveal. But taking a little bit of time to figure out what that game board strategy is for yourself can be life-changing. Because so often what we do when we're trying to plan the year out is we just start thinking about, oh, I have to write the book and edit it, and then I'm going to publish it. And that's it, right? So we don't really start to think about all the different little pieces that go into it. And so this can be very helpful. The other thing that I wanted to talk about when it comes to game board strategy is this. Not everybody who is here is going to be able to go through the rest of this workbook and say, I will be writing this project and it's going to be complete by this date and I'm going to publish it on this date. For many of us, this is creative work. Now, there are writers that are here that can do that. I have friends that do it. If you watch Hildy McQueen's YouTube channel, you will see that she has a writing planner and she will plan out exactly when she's going to write how many words, and she follows through with it, and she's incredible. I cannot do this. My creative brain doesn't tend to say I can write this book in 30 days. Like, it's just going to come when it comes. And some of us are like that. So everybody's process is going to be a little bit different, but it has always frustrated me that I am not always the type of person who can write to a schedule. And so when I started thinking about it, I really started going through this process of what is my game board strategy and creating for myself sort of a strategic roadmap. And this is work that I've done with Amber McHugh, by the way. She's my business mentor. And even though she doesn't specifically only talk about writing, this has been part of it. So I have the little road here because you're really kind of creating for yourself a roadmap of how you're going to publish your books. So before, like, we've done the future thinking, or we've done the reflection. Now we're going to do a little bit of future thinking, where we're going to say, you know, here's where I am right now, and then here's where I want to be by the end of 2023, right? So when we go through this process of thinking of what books we're going to write, like I said, it's not always about saying, these are the books I really need to write, and so I'm just going to throw them in here. Instead, we think, okay, we're going to marry these ideas of here's the books I need to write and here's my strategy. Also, here's the time I have available. So until you get kind of those two pieces, it's difficult to kind of plan. So this is here for us a little bit later. And before we move to the time, which we're about to do, which is actually in your workbook, one of the things that can be super helpful is to take the books that you're working on now and take just a little bit of a look ahead to, like we did the reflection where we looked behind. Now take a little bit of a look ahead and say, okay, here's the books that I wrote down in my journaling that I want to get done, or that I'm currently working on, or that I'm currently owed to my readers or to my agent or whatever. And now, how can I see this sort of playing out over the next few years? And this is not an exact kind of science here, and this might be something that you sort of come back to, and you can easily just write this in your notes page that you have at the back, 2023, 2024, 2025. But here's why I recommend doing this, is because if you say, okay, like I know I've got to write book 12 and I know I want to get this done in 2023. And I also want to try to get book 4 of my Eternal Sorrows book finished. But I also have The Witch's Key, which needs a sequel. When I start looking at my time in just a minute, I might find that I can fit it into 2023, but I feel like it's pretty unlikely. So then that book probably comes over here, and that'll be called The Witch's Door. And then I'm kind of, other than the Spirit Walkers that I need to rewrite, I'm kind of out from under all the stuff that I've already promised to people, other than I'm currently working on The Disappearance of Vanessa Shaw. So that hopefully will get published early in the year. And then you can start to think, what else do I want to do? And part of the reason that I ask you to just kind of make this and then come back to it as you begin to plan is because some of you will be in a position where you're trying to decide what new thing you want to start this year, or you have an idea of something new that you want to start this year. And this is where I got myself into some massive trouble that I have spent the last 5 years trying to get out from under. Is I just started thinking about, what do I want to do? And how can I get myself back into a writing position? And so I just started doing whatever came to mind. So it would be like, okay, we're in the middle of 2023. I'm going to add a new series over here. And then I wouldn't think about the fact that if I start a new series, that means I have to write more of that series next year, and potentially more of that series next year. And once you've started 4 or 5 series and you can only write 2 books a year, you start to really put yourself in a position where it's difficult to grow your career as an indie author. So part of this planning process, when you start thinking about your game board strategy and your future planning, is how many books is it really logical that I can write in any given year? And where am I going to spend that time? Like if you think about, okay, let's say I have 2 game board pieces any given year, and those are the 2 books that you can do, then what game board pieces are those for the year? So like in 2023, I'm just going to kind of erase this real quick. No. In 2023, if I know if I can write 2 books a year, then I have this game board piece. Number 1 is The Disappearance of Vanessa Shaw, which I've already been working on. And then the other one will be book 12. And I can sit here, if I only think I can do 2, I can sit here and I can know that that's going to be where all my promotions go, that's where I'm going to spend my time in terms of, my plotting and my writing and things like that. Whereas if I sat here thinking, oh, whatever comes up, then I might not put my promotional dollars or anything in the right place. Or I might be delusional and think that I'm going to write like a brand new serial, and I'm going to write book 4, and I'm going to do live streams for The Witch's Door. And then I'm immediately over planning for myself. Or I might start a brand new series over here, not thinking about the fact that in 2024, if I only have 2 game board pieces, I really need them to be book 4 and The Witch's Door. And if I start another new series, that's just putting so much more pressure on my plate. Is this kind of making sense? I know it's not going to apply to everybody, but I just wanted to mention it because when you are not a natural future planner, it doesn't mean you have to stick to this plan. It doesn't mean anybody's going to hold you to it. It's just for you. But when you don't think about the fact that you're starting something new, oh, I'm going to start a new pen name. Okay. But what does that mean for next year and the year after? Sometimes we just think about this year. But when you start a brand new pen name, if you're actually going to grow it, that means you've got 2 full pen names you've got to manage for all of next year. And so this kind of thinking can help you decide, like, okay, I've got 3 slots open on my writing calendar because I can write 1 book every 4 months. Where are you best going to use those 3 slots? And that can be so much more helpful than just saying, ooh, I really wanted to write this book about witches this year. When you start planning for how many slots you have. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the plan. So now we are back to your actual planner. So we're 50 minutes in, and I apologize, but we've gone over this kind of stuff before, but we've never talked about the other stuff before. And I really wanted to bring it up because when you start thinking about all the steps to the pieces that need to get done, and you start really thinking about how many books can I logically write in any given year, then you can start to say, okay, what's the most strategic way to fill those empty slots? 3 slots a year, 2 slots a year. For some of you, it's still 5 slots a year, but it sure is hard to make 4 pen names work when you only have 4 or 5 books that you can write a year, right? So just kind of thinking ahead to all of that is very helpful. So if you turn to just this kind of, there's a welcome little message from me here. And then you turn to this like fourth page, I guess, in your little planner. We're going to try to figure it out. If you don't know, like, let's say how many slots you have or how many pieces are going onto your game board this year, how many big book pieces are going, that's what we're going to figure out here. So we're going to go through this process that we've kind of gone through every year. Step 1 is to go through your entire calendar. So you have a calendar here. I really love playing with digital planners these days. I'm going to try to contain my excitement. But you have a calendar in here that takes you through January through June. So you've got the first half of the year, and then the second half of the year you've got here. And if you don't have this download, you can just use any calendar that you have. And you've got, as you can see, I pulled these pages from my HB90 Goals Planner, and I left the little block, like the little line there, which is usually where we put our task blocks. For anybody who's using HB90, you can go in there and either estimate your task blocks if you'd like to, or you can use that to put what stage of the process you're going to be on in your game board strategy. So for me, in January week 1, I'm still going to be in the drafting phase of The Disappearance of Vanessa Shaw. So I could write that, and I could write drafting over here or something like that. Or actually, probably what I would do is knowing me, I'm going to color code it. So I would probably come over here and do, like, let's say that book is red. I'm going to put The Disappearance of Vanessa Shaw up here because I know that's the project I'm working on right now. And then here I'm going to say I'm in the drafting phase, and so on. So this is something that you'll gradually begin to fill out if you would like to use it in that way. But the first step that we're going to do is we're going to go through the entire calendar, and you're going to mark off first any vacations, any holidays, spring breaks, any time you know when you're not going to be writing in the next year. So for example, January 23rd is my birthday, thus the little cake there. And the next morning I am flying to Florida to go to Disney World with my best friend Kelly. And I will not be back until Friday. And there will be 0 writing being done during this week. Now, in addition to that, starting January 2nd, really, I am also going to be, and I'm going to put this in a different color here. So I'm going to put this in this little green color. I am also going to be re-recording Publish and Thrive. So many of you have taken this course already, but it's going to get a complete redo. Every single video will be brand new. The question from the reflections will be posted after in the community tab. So I know that I'm going to go through this entire calendar and I'm going to mark off not just days that I know that I have vacations, but also I'm going to mark on here what other projects I know that I have going on. So let's say you know that you're speaking at an event, or you know you're going to the Planners Gone Wild or whatever it's called. Now I just lost my train of thought of what it's called. If you know you're going to a Comic-Con, or you have a family vacation, those kinds of things, go through the entire year. And obviously most of us are going to know more about what's going on in the first part of the year than the end of the year, which will still be kind of up for grabs. So you can adjust, go wild. Thank you. I was like, it's not wild. It's kind of wild for planners, but not exactly what I meant to say. Go wild. So if you know you're going to go wild. Another thing that I know that I have is, I think it's this March 13th date. So I'm a color coding person, so I'd probably color code this. This week right here, I'm pretty sure is my son's spring break. And so we were thinking about flying to North Carolina for that. But this is also going to be Publish and Thrive will be in its final week. And then I've got HB90 also going this week. So just taking the time, we won't have time probably to do everything here together, but this will be HB90 week for Q2. This will be every week here will be Publish and Thrive Q&A. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If anybody is looking to join Publish and Thrive, because I saw there was a question about it, registration is slated to open on January 22nd, and the course will begin on February 5th. And right now, to make space for my writing and a Kickstarter and doing audiobooks and other things I want to do next year, I am only planning to run the course one time this year. That is subject to change if some of my other projects don't work out and I have time in the fall. But right now, I'm only planning to run it once. And then you get live access. But this will be the only time it will run, and it will be brand new. Anybody who is an alumni will get free access to all the new stuff. So look for an email probably next week about how that transition will take place. But I would go through, and I encourage you to go through and mark off anything you know, even if it's, let's say it's a recurring kind of thing. Like, let's say you just don't ever write on the weekends. You can go through this entire calendar and mark off every Saturday and every Sunday, because you just refuse to write on the weekends. And that is fine for you. You can also go through and mark birthdays. You can go through and mark just anything you know about your writing. Reminder to Renee. Yes. So after that process is done, the next thing that we do, well, okay, let me take it in order. So once you've been through that process, you're going to go back to that planning page that we had kind of at the beginning. And you'll read this part right here. It says, count up how many days you have marked off and subtract that number from 365 to get your total working days so far. And I did have to look, like 365 this year, but we have 366 days in 2024 because it's a leap year. So 365 days. And then you'll go through, and of course you can do this after the live stream is over, to see how many days you have left on your calendar. So how that is going to look is basically you're going to go back to your calendar and you're going to just count. And you could, if you wanted to, you could use these little blocks to count up how many days in each week. Or what I usually typically do is I go through and I say, how many days am I just not going to be writing at all during the year first? Now, where this can get a little bit tricky, and we talked about this a little bit last year, and we talk about this in HB90, is, so I have, let's say, Publish and Thrive going on. I'm going to be re-recording. I will need to make a decision of, does that mean I'm not going to do any writing at all when I'm re-recording, or am I going to create space while I'm re-recording to also be drafting The Disappearance of Vanessa Shaw? When I'm running Publish and Thrive and I'm doing, like, let's say I have this 2-hour Q&A on the 11th, do I want to say that I'm not going to be writing at all or not? And for some of you, you may know that you have some kind of event going on. Let's just use Publish and Thrive since it's on my calendar. You may know that you're going to be taking that course for 6 weeks, but you might still be writing during that time. It just might be that where you normally write 2,000 words a day, you're going to plan to only write 1,000 words a day, or you're going to try to plan it where that's like a plotting week or something like that. And when it comes to being exact with this kind of thing, none of this is like 100%, right? None of this is like you have to plan this exactly right. What we're trying to do is get an estimate of how many projects you can complete next year. And it's going to be an estimate. It's just going to be an estimate. So once you have all the days marked off that you know you're not going to be writing, for me, I'm just going to estimate, and I'm going to say that it is 100 days off out of 365. So I'm going to write 100 here, and then I'm going to say that my total days remaining are 365 days for the year minus 100, and that gives me 265 days to work on my writing projects. Then once you have that, step 2 is, like, once you know your vacations, your other obligations, all those things. Now what we need to think about is, over this past year, how many days on average per month did you need off for other things? Not obligations, but sickness, illness. Then how many did you need off for, mental health days? Did you end up, or do you end up technically, like, every month needing a good week that you're just not going to write, and you don't want to plan to write because you just know that you struggle with depression? So I can't complete 365 projects in a year. No. So if you can see, it says number of days. We have 365 days, right? So how many days do you need off on a typical thing? Now, sometimes you're going to have better months than others, but what we're trying to do is give ourselves buffer, right? So if you have a chronic illness, you have someone that you're caretaking for, or you have a toddler at home who is going through sleep regression and you anticipate that that's going to continue on, you just had a baby, and you have some other things, how many days do you want to give yourself off in addition to those 100 days for chronic illness, for mental health days, for going to the museum, all of that kind of thing? 100%, Deb, buffer days are a must. And when you don't give yourself a little bit of extra time for your buffer days, the world takes them from you anyway. And so it's good to give yourself that time. And there's no judgment on how much time you may need compared to somebody else. So just give yourself the time you need. If you struggle with depression, for example, that is going to be something that is going to affect your writing most likely. And it's okay. Like, giving yourself extra pressure, you know how to handle, like, whether or not you can handle that. Like, for some people, giving yourself extra pressure is the motivation that you need to keep moving forward. For some of you, the extra pressure is debilitating. And so ask yourself, what is the level of pressure that's actually good for me? And what's the level of pressure that gets to be toxic for me? And then plan accordingly. Because if you say, oh, I've got 30 days to write this 60,000 word book, then you've got to write 2,000 words a day without a break, right? And if that kind of pressure, like writing 2,000 words a day, is not normal for you, and that kind of pressure is going to be difficult, maybe you could do it once because you've got a deadline, but to rely on yourself to do it all year over and over again is unrealistic. So this is all about how many days that you have. So let's say, just to make my math easier, I'm going to give myself 65 days throughout the year for buffer days, just to make my math easy, because if you watched last year's live stream, you know I struggled with my math. So Again, don't judge your number here of how many days you have left, because if you are a full-time, you're someone who works a full-time job, you're going to have less days than I do. And, but I will say that if you get to this point of the process and you have like 350 days that you're planning to write next year, really ask yourself, is that what you did this last year? And how did that feel to you? Because you need to find that place where you're being realistic about where you are in your journey. And so really that's part of why we did that reflection. Like, how many words did you actually write? How did you do on your projects? Did you write 3 projects last year? And was that a stretch? You might want to back it up a little bit this year, or come up with better, like a better strategy for when you're going to be writing. I personally am planning to do more next year than I did this year, but not by crazy standards. When I look at my schedule, I wish, I wish that I could finish 4 books. Like, if I was setting up my dream schedule for next year, I would love to write 4 different books, because I have 4 projects I would love to finish. But I know that's not going to be realistic for me. So I'm going to look at my schedule and I'm going to do the best I can to create a strategy that fits into my realistic schedule. Janine says, what if we're in major league burnout? Last year, so if you were in major league burnout last year and that is part of your reflection, but you feel like you have healed and you're ready to get started, then I would create a plan for myself for this next year that takes into account how you're feeling now, but also takes into account that you don't want to push yourself beyond a healthy level. So really trying to plan for what you think is now your healthy level in recovery from burnout, and then keeping an eye on how you feel every month. And if you reach a point where you're like, oh, this is not going to be realistic. And I wouldn't put any pressure that feels like it's too hard. Like, I wouldn't put a pre-order that forces me to write a book in 30 days. I would give myself the time that you need to do. And this is so true too. It is eye-opening and it's shocking how your months just shrunk down. And it is true. But this is what I talk about in HB90. And it is so very important. And I wish that I could drive this home to everybody, is when we look at our time realistically, we're actually giving ourselves a really nice gift because we're looking at the reality of our situation. Not going through this process can make us feel like we have more time, but it doesn't actually give us more time. So feeling like, oh, I should be able to write 6 books next year doesn't actually create the space to write 6 books. The space you have is the space you're going to have. Like, you're not going to suddenly be working those days that you didn't think you were. So the reality allows you to plan for the time you actually have, which gives you the power to say, okay, I thought I could write 5 books. I'm seeing that my game board strategy is only dealing with 2 gaming pieces of books. So where am I going to put those? And, how am I going to spend that? And it is shocking. And sometimes there can be a mourning process when it comes to this, but it is important, right? So days remaining from step 1 for me were 265, and I'm going to subtract 65 for my buffer days. And then my days remaining are 200. So this is the process that you go through to get your days. So I have a little calendar note in here that by definition, these buffer days are days we don't know when we're going to need them. And so there's no way to assign exact dates to them. You can't say, well, I know I'm going to need a day off for mental health in October 1st, like, you don't know that necessarily. Now you can sort of plan ahead for them if you have big projects and you know that you tend to need a week off after big projects. So for example, if I turn back to this calendar and I say, okay, I have Publish and Thrive, I have HB90 and spring break, which is going to be travel with children across the country. So this is going to be a rough time for me. I would pretty easily be able to come in and say here that I'm probably going to use some of these buffer days in this last week of March, right? So I can kind of pre-plan some of my buffer days if I wanted to. And this would be a week that I would want to write in here that this is going to be like massive refill the well time. So like all I would plan to do during that week, if I can, is to game eat lots of great food, go outside and play with the kids. Probably the weather's going to be pretty nice here in Texas. So like maybe some museums and other things that fill the well. And that's actually not a bad idea to have a list of things that fill the well when you're starting to feel depleted on your buffer days. Like, here's how I would like to use my buffer days when I need a mental health day is here's the resources. And even like getting migraines. I'm so sorry that you go through that. But like when a migraine gets triggered, if you had a resource list of like when I have a migraine, so this is similar to that game board strategy. When X happens, that triggers Y. When I have a migraine, that triggers, first of all, a buffer day. And then these 3 resources. Maybe you have a process for something that you post so people know that you're off for the day. You have a favorite ice pack that you like to get. Maybe you have a pill that you like to take. Maybe you go into a dark room. Maybe you listen to some ASMR. That's what my husband does. He'll close his eyes and put his earphones in to listen to ASMR. So you have a list, and that can happen for yourself too. Like when I have a down day where I'm feeling depression or, I need more resources, here's a list of all these things that I can do for myself when I need to refill the well or I need a buffer day. This was interesting too, like bad anniversaries. Some of these these are things that we don't think about putting in our calendar. But if you have, an anniversary of something tragic or something that was difficult that every year when that day happens, you're kind of out of commission because you want to make space for that memory, or you want to be able to mourn, and you don't want to be forced to be writing a 5,000 word, day so that you can get this pre-order out. Make sure that you create that space in your schedule, because I'll tell you this right now, like creating as many books as possible and creating wealth and having this amazing author career is the dream, right? We all want that. But to get that at the cost of your mental health is not actually going to bring you the joy and success that you think that you're going to have when you get there. Like hitting the New York Times bestseller list is not going to feel as good to you if you have pushed yourself beyond good mental health to get there. And it is so important that we take care of our mental health along the way and know that our worth as a human being is not tied to how many books we write a year. It's tied to, just our inherent worthiness. Like you are worthy and good just as you are, regardless of if you wrote 50 words last year or 50,000 or 500,000. And that is not something our culture teaches us. But going through the calendar and seeing what we really have and making space for our mental health days, making space for breaks. And here's another part of that game board strategy that we talked about is maybe part of your game board strategy is that when you finish a draft of a book, you need a full 2 weeks off to just let that book sit before you start working on the edits. So what are you going to do during those 2 weeks, and what do you need to do? So that might become part of that game board strategy list. And I promise that I will create for you guys a better download for this. I wish I really had this based on last year's stuff. And then when I really started thinking about what I wanted to say today, I added to it. So I will create a better download for this and give it to you in January. So once you have your number of days, then we start to go to the, projects. It's before this. Got to find it. Hold on. So then we start to look at our projects. So the projects page is right after this page that we did our little math on. And now we're going to look at each individual project. So this year I added a page to this workbook that wasn't here last year. So last year and the year before and the year before, I had this page that has basically you have space here for 9 different writing projects. Now, if you're sitting here going, well, Sarah, this is ridiculous. There's no way I can write 9 projects. Like I'm not putting 9 here because I expect that most writers will get 9, but 9 fit nicely on the page. And so this is what I put in here because there are people that are writing short stories or other things and they can write a lot. And there are people here that write more than 9 books a year. And so you can just feel free to copy a page and move on. But most of us are probably going to be more on this first page, like 1 to 3 projects, probably most people. And if you want to share how many projects you think you're going to take on for 2023 in the comments. Feel free to share that with the group. But it's not a comparison thing. Like, I did not publish a book this year. I published a short story, and it was a good one. But I did not finish nor publish a book this year. And I think this was the first year since I started in 2010 that I did not publish a book. But next year, I'm hoping for 2, and that's going to be an improvement. And I'm not going to judge myself based on what some of my friends were able to do. Instead, I'm going to say, I did that reflection. I understand why and where I didn't, get that many books done this year. And I'm going to give myself grace, and I'm not going to focus on the disappointment of not publishing a book this year. Instead, I'm going to look ahead, but I'm not going to make the mistake of looking ahead, expecting myself to do twice as much as humanly possible just so I can make up for last year. Like, 1 to 2 projects is probably more common for most people. Some people, 3 to 5 is going to be more likely. But there are people who can do more than that. And there's no judgment, right? Some people write quickly, and there's no difference in quality. So just try. I wish the author community could kind of get past this idea that if you write too fast, you're not enough quality, or if you write too slow, you're never going to have a career for yourself. Like, let's just let go of the judgment and just be who you are, right? Embrace yourself, embrace your process, and know that you were put on this earth as you are for a reason. And you don't have to be anybody else. Even if somebody else is good at writing a lot, you don't have to do that. And you don't have to apologize if you can write 10 books a year, because that's awesome and you're amazing, and keep going. We're going to cheer you on. But let's try in the author community to stop judging each other for how fast or slow we write, and stop judging ourselves, by the way. Go at your own pace, because that's your pace, and your pace is the best pace for you. And that is how you were designed. And that is how your success is going to come about. There are people who write 10 books a year and still don't make profit. And there are people who write 1 book a year and make $1 million+. And there's no correlation there necessarily. So trust yourself, and it's going to be fine. The page that I added to this is this little spread, which is basically the same thing, but instead of having like project number here, I thought some of you might appreciate this idea of it's the same little thing. And then you have a page here of notes page, so that you can actually write out that game board strategy, or you can write out your notes about that project if you would like, instead of necessarily putting it into a whole list of projects. So I have an example kind of already filled out. So I know the very first project I'm going to work on is the project I'm already been working on. So if you had a project for Nano, let us know in the comments, do you have a project that you are already working on that will carry over into January? Let us know what it is. So Disappearance of Vanessa Shaw is something I worked on during Nano. I would like to finish it. So when I start thinking about how many days it's going to take me to complete it. Now, if you have done HB90, you might want to shift this. Instead of being the number of days to complete it, you might want to say number of task blocks to complete it. So if you're not in HB90, but you watched my most recent video that came out about time management this Thursday, you will start to understand what task blocks is. But basically, a task block is a 30-minute segment of time, similar to a Pomodoro or a sprint. So you might prefer to say task blocks, because I find that days are not created equally. So if you come in and you say it's going to take me 30 days to write, okay, are we talking about 30 days when I'm also re-recording Publish and Thrive, or 30 days when all I have to do is write? And there's a difference between those types of days. So you might want to come in here and adjust this to task blocks if you're comfortable with that concept. Now, what you could do is follow this exact set of game board strategy here: plot and prep, rough draft, edits, and publishing. Or you could come over to this page over here, and you could make a list of what are those steps that you created earlier in this live stream that you need to get done. And then you could estimate how long it takes you for each one. Now, I'm going to just mention this real quick too. I struggle so hard with task blocking. I always forget to count them if I'm swallowed up in a task and lose track. You know what? That is actually okay, Summer, but it can still be helpful to plan with task blocks, even if you don't follow through with tracking them. And the reason is because it gives you a measurement other than just, it's going to take me 50 days to complete this novel. Instead, what you can do is you can say, okay, it's going to take me 100 task blocks. And I think I have 5 task blocks on Monday, 4 on Tuesday, none on Wednesday or Thursday, but 3 on Friday. Then you can start to average or look at each day individually rather than a day as, infinite amount of time. Like all days are not created equally. So even if you don't go back and actually track your task blocks, it's totally fine to just plan with them and then ignore them, because it can still help you to give yourself boundaries. So I just wanted to mention that. It works for some people and it doesn't for others. So if you don't like the task block thing, don't feel like, oh, I'm not doing it right, or, this whole planning thing doesn't work for me, I'm going to throw it all out, because, we all work differently. So learning how you work is, that's your strength, and it's great. So you could go through the whole process of, if I was saying this was the disappearance of Vanessa Shaw, I don't necessarily need more plot and prep time because I've already done that. But I could, instead of following this exact thing, I could go down and bring these steps out a little bit more granularly. So I could add in my cover art. I could add in my, revisions and my ARC team. I could add in my formatting. So you could put all of that stuff in. It kind of gets accomplished in publishing, but you could go in and you could actually take it task by task on a more granular way. So either way you want to do it, or both is fine. But the idea is kind of to go through and say, let's say I have 30 days that I know I'm going to be working on this rough draft. And then I think it's going to take me about 30 days to do my edits. And then an average of 10 days to 2 weeks to do my publishing. So it gives you kind of a target spot once you've gone through and you've estimated the number of days or the number of task blocks. And then you can go back to your calendar. So let's say you come up with, I've got 70 days to work on this project. Then the next step is to go back out to your calendar and count up 70 working days. Because remember how you came over here and you said, I've got certain days that I'm not going to be working. So just for the sake of an example, I'm going to pull up red again. And I'm going to say, I don't plan to work this day or this day. I'm not going to work my birthday or any of these travel days. And let's say this is what my January looks like, where I don't have any days for these red marks. And then let's say February is the same way, no Saturdays. I would just go through and I would count the days until I get to 70. So I'm probably also not going to work on January 1st for New Year's. I'm probably going to be with the family. So I could go through and say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 days this week. And I could put it over here if I wanted. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And then I could just continue 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. So January, I get 22 of those days, but I need 70, right? So I need to continue on. And so I would just count up all the days that I'm actually planning to work until I get to 70. And that's going to give me, it may not be exact, but that's going to give me an estimate of when I think I can finish this book and get it out. And that it's not about being perfect, and it's not about following through to this exact deadline. It's about giving yourself a rough estimate to work off of, which then tells you what's a realistic number of projects to shoot for throughout the year. So I can't necessarily count this 100%, but let's say this is 28 minus 4. So this one would be 24 days. I'm still not there. I'm only at 46. And then this one, let's say, is off 1, 2, 3, 4 days as well, plus this last week. So that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So this is going to be 21 days. So once you actually start to do this, at first you might say, well, 70 days seems like I could finish this pretty quickly, right? I could be done by March. But when you actually start to take those days off, you start to realize March still only gets me to 67 days. So I'm still going to need part of April to be working on this book. And if I'm not working on Saturdays, then that brings me to like 68, 69, April 4th as a sort of tentative deadline for when I think this book will be finished. And that gives me a little bit of clarity about how many projects I can write this year. And this, I also know, is a project that's already started and I already have 60,000 words written on. So when I start thinking about the next project on my game board strategy, which for me is going to be book 12 of my Shadow Demon saga, then I would start the process all over again. And I'm going to go back to this projects over here and I'm going to put in that second book that I want to work on. We're going to make it purple. And I'm just going to put, well, I'll put SDS book 12. So this is my Shadow Demon Saga book 12, which is also partially finished. So then I would go through that process again and I would say, okay, how much time do I want to give myself, or how much time do I realistically think I need in terms of days or task blocks, whichever is better, to work on this particular book. So you could give yourself, let's say I was going to give myself a full month or something to work on the plot, since I've struggled with it so much. I don't actually think I'm going to need that because I've been working on it at the same time, which brings up another point is right now, the way I'm going through this is if I'm working on these projects linearly, I work on one and then I'm finishing another. But your personal game board strategy might be that once you finish the rough draft of one, when you start edits of book one, you're going to go ahead and start plotting or drafting book two. So some people here are working on multiple projects at once. So for example, if I think I'm going to plot and prep this book in 30 days, I might actually go back to my calendar and I might figure out that even though Disappearance of Vanessa Shaw is over here in April, I'm planning to work on both books. So once I get done with the rough draft of Disappearance of Vanessa Shaw, which I said was going to be 30 days. So that gives me 23, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. Okay. So let's see. 1, 2, 3. That would give me an estimate of somewhere around February 9th, I can start working on the plot of book 12. So then for the rest of these months here, I would be working on 2 books at once. I'd be working on edits of Disappearance of Vanessa Shaw and plotting of book 12. So you can layer projects in like that as well. And sometimes, I know I've kind of made a mess of this, but sometimes the way that I will go about that in my actual planning, it's not holding onto this, is I will color code this. So I just want to kind of give you an example. So let's say I am working on the Disappearance of Vanessa Shaw and I've got that as the color red. I might have it in my calendar like this going throughout, and I'll write on here edits because I know I'm working on edits for this. And then I will also layer in this other book and I'll just layer it like a line. And I'll put that this one I'm currently working on plot. So feel free to layer these as whatever your current project is. So Inka says, I'm usually drafting one book while editing another because I can't edit for more than 2 hours in a row. So if you have that time, this is why the game board strategy can be super helpful. So let me kind of pull you back to that. If you joined us sort of later in the live stream, I know we're coming up on an hour and a half. If you joined us later in the live stream, these pages are not actually in your planner, but I will be providing those to you. When you create a game board strategy for yourself where you say, this is the first step that I take, and when I hit X, when X is completed, I begin Y, then you can create a strategic roadmap for yourself where you're layering in multiple pieces. So for example, it could be layering multiple pieces of one project so that when you hit the editing phase, you also begin your publishing phase. So that would look something like, let's say if we decide to color code it again, we've got The Disappearance of Vanessa Shaw. This is, let's just say this is book 1 of the year. You've got your strategy here of, okay, I'm drafting. And then as soon as the draft is over, the next step is not to start edits, but rather to commission, oh my gosh, how do I spell this word? That's probably wrong. Does it have 2 S's? Cover art. And to alert my ARC team that there's something coming and to put the book on pre-order. So your game board strategy might actually be that when X is completed, when the draft is completed, it triggers cover art, it triggers ARC team, it triggers pre-order, and then it also triggers that the edits begin. And for some of you, when your edits begin, thank you, I was like, that didn't look right. When the edits begin, you start layering in your next project, which is edits begin of this one and plot begins of this other book simultaneously. And so I think that you can layer projects and you can have for yourself a game board strategy. So I saw that Janine asked, what happens if deadlines give you hives? For some of us, the pressure of an external deadline is like honey. It's like the most amazing, like fire under your butt. For others of us, that deadline is something that causes you to freeze. And so knowing yourself well enough to know what is the result that I get when I put too much pressure on myself will help you decide whether you want to actually go in and schedule these projects for your year or whether you just want to create a game board strategy. You don't actually have to have deadlines. The way that you can use this game board strategy is you could go back to the calendar. Oh, I don't have this hyperlinked. I was like, why isn't that working? You could go back to your calendar and you could just give yourself a roundabout, like tell yourself, this is not a deadline. This is just kind of an average of when I think that it might be done. So you would say, okay, Disappearance of Vanessa Shaw is probably going to be done, can reasonably be done in April. But let's say, I'm going to give myself a buffer and say, we'll put it to May. So then you can say, okay, after that, I will start the next project. How long is that going to take? And you can kind of give yourself some deadlines for it and push it through the rest of the year and say, okay, realistically, I could imagine that I'm going to have the second book of the year done in September, which then gives me 3 extra months, either buffer or 3 extra months to start working on another project. And then you can say, I'm going to stop looking at the calendar and I'm just going to create my game board strategy with the idea in mind that I'm going to complete 2 projects this year. And then I have lots of buffer. And then you don't even have to look at deadlines. You just know realistically that 2 is kind of your limit for the year reasonably. And then you also know that should one of those projects go way over, you still have a strategy in place for what steps you're going to take, even if they didn't happen in 2023 and they happen in 2024. For some of us, though, this is the case. I need deadlines. And this really comes down to your personal strengths and your personality. For many of us, we need that outer accountability that says it has to be done. And there are multiple ways that you can set outer accountability for yourself. One, you can use this system to go ahead and set up a pre-order for yourself, which puts massive amount of pressure. But for some people, man, that really works to schedule out multiple pre-orders. Another thing you could do is go ahead and schedule time with your cover artist and your editor that you have to actually pay for. So if you say, okay, I think I'm going to be done around September 5th or whatever, what's that date? September 4th, you could go ahead and pay that deposit to your editor to get on her schedule for September 4th. And now you have a deadline and that helps you with getting, and staying on target. And if you do have that deadline, then you can take your game board strategy and you could say, I need to be at this section of the game board by the time I hit July 1st or whatever dates. And you can go ahead and schedule those out. And that can be super, super helpful. But what the game board strategy allows you to do is you get to move pieces around, but you don't have to necessarily do them. It's more about the order you do things than it is about the time. And for so many of us, taking that time pressure off is what allows us to write faster. And so learning more about yourself and how you work can be super helpful. So going back to this little plan here, we say we're aiming for our best, most realistic guess to how many writing projects we can do in 2023. If you like deadlines, feel free to go ahead down this little path of your projects and actually give yourself deadlines. There's also a section here that says project started on and then project completed by. So what you could do is you could have a list here of like, I know I'm going to start the project on this day. And then you can come back once you finish it to say when you finished it and how many days, so that when you come back to this planning next year, you can see how well you did compared to your estimate. And let's say I come back to this next year and I see that like I probably should have another date here and say, let's say I was trying to have this done by April 9th. And I thought I was going to get it done by April 9th. When I come back to this at the end of the year or in April or whenever I finish this book, I might come back and say, well, it actually didn't get done until May 10th. So now I know I can go back through my calendar and I can see, instead of 70 days, how many days did it take me? And I can make note of that. And I can say, oh, it actually took me 80 days instead of 70. So next year, when I start planning my my stuff, I need to give myself an extra 10 days per project or an extra whatever many days per project, because you can see how, like, if consistently for every project you were 15 days off or you were always a month off, then you could go ahead and create that extra buffer and space for yourself. Alternately, you might say, gosh, I finished that book by February 10th. So maybe I'm giving myself too much buffer, and then you can plan accordingly. But that's the value of data over the course of multiple years. So that is basically our planning process. And yes, Angela, it is digital washi tape down here on the bottom. I could not resist. I love it. If you have been enjoying kind of the look of this digital planner, this is in GoodNotes on my iPad. You can also use Zoto or Note Shelf on like a Samsung tablet. It works great with a pen. There is a digital version of the HB90 planner published right now that is a undated digital planner, but there is this particular design I did myself. And this is how, like, you can see the Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. This is what the digital planner for 2023 goals planner will look like. And that will get published hopefully soon. It's basically finished. So, there is also a Q1 dated planner coming up. So somebody asked, will I go in and add the new sheets to this download? And yes, I will just go and alter the original download and I will put it in the writing plan. So if you want to re-download it, you can either just print the pages that you missed, or you can reprint it, or you can re-download it, and it's fine. So there are so many fun things that you can do with this type of thing. Like, there are stickers, for example. So just to give you a little bit of a heads up, Adrienne Michelle has a business called Procrastiplanner, etc., which is like the best word ever. And she has HB90's digital stickers and printable stickers, but she also has stickers in her shop that are like, book launch. So you can say 1 week until the book, 3 days till the book. And she has like self-care stickers and different stuff like that. And each of them are kind of cut out. So you just would come in here and select the sticker and you would copy it. And then you can go into your little planner and you can go into your calendar or whatever. Let's see, where's the calendar? And you could paste it in. It's so cute, y'all. Like a little coffee break on the 18th. Her stickers are wonderful. So she has digital stickers as well, if you didn't know. So, so that is it. Does anybody have any questions about your own situation or anything like that, I will be happy to answer some questions. And I do apologize that I didn't have those questions in the game board strategy in there, but I really wanted to touch on it since I feel like it's something that's been missing from this planning process in the past. So let me see if I can pull this little iPad thing down. There's no finesse here with my little banners like some of my other people. So, all right. So really excited. Yes, they are so much fun. So the stickers are a separate purchase. The stickers are from Procrastiplanner, etc. Those are just her own stickers, and you would just purchase them from her. My planner does come with some stickers that I made, but they're just more like date dots and little I don't think I have them on this planner right now because this is my new iPad, but it has like little coffee cups and other stuff. So it does come with some stickers, but these are ones that I made, and I'm not saying they're as cute as Adrian's. Okay, a couple questions. Salome says, how do you estimate times for parts you haven't done before? This is a good question. So if you, let's say you haven't quite finished your first draft yet, and so you don't know how long editing is going to take. You don't know how long querying agents is going to take. Like, you'll never know that. There might be pieces of the process you haven't done, like your publishing process or other things like that. So what I would do with that is just sort of give yourself what feels like a reasonable estimate and talk to other authors. So we have our Heart Breathings writing community, and if you're on Facebook, there's 5,000 people there. If you're on my Discord server, there's, I don't know, 2,000 people there. So feel free to just reach out to some of those writers and ask them, how long does it take you to do your edits? How do you figure out how you do your edits, and kind of get some ideas? Some of the process is just going to be, I don't know. Until you do it, you don't necessarily know. But I think a good sort of frame of mind is, if it took you 6 months to write your book, assume that it's going to take you at least 3 months to edit. If it took you 3 months to write your book, assume that it's going to take at least 6 weeks. So for a lot of authors, the editing process is not as long as the drafting process, especially when it's your first book. However, there are some people that it takes 3 times longer to do edits, especially if you're a pantser. Sometimes you can write the book faster, but then you need longer. And there's really no guideline to like edits take 6 months. It's just going to be whatever it takes for you. So when it comes to estimating, you kind of just have to give it your best guess. So for example, if you're in the rough draft phase, but you feel like the words are really good and the story's going the way you wanted, then maybe say it's going to take you a month to edit. But if you know it's a big old mess and it's going to need a lot of time, give yourself, 3 months or something like that. And then for the publishing side of it, that's another thing that you can ask people, like, how long did it take you to get your cover artist and things like that? Because I think that it's easier to strategize things like how long it takes to format your book, or how long it takes to publish or get an arc together, than it's like how long does it take to edit a book, because that's going to be so different. Is the game board strategy from a book or podcast? Is there some place to go to read more about it? No, it's really kind of something that I sort of made up. I haven't heard of anybody else talking about it. I was on a call with my business mentor, Amber McHugh, and she was the one. I was telling her that this was a couple years ago. I was telling her that I was so frustrated by the fact that I have such a hard time coming up with exact dates, and how, again, comparison, I was feeling so frustrated because so many people are able to put out pre-orders, and I keep missing my pre-orders, and I just can't stick to a schedule. And she was like, what if you just figured out the dominoes that fall over in what order? And we kind of collectively began to call it a game board strategy. So it's something that Amber McHugh and I sort of came up with together on a coaching call. And I did ask her permission. Can I take that term and use it for myself and continue to develop it? And she said, of course. So you might hear her use it as well. Yeah. So let's see. You are so welcome. I'm so grateful for everybody that is here and everybody that listens, and definitely know along the way that I don't have all the answers either. I certainly am not publishing 12 books a year. So feel free to make it work for you. Anything that you ever hear me say on my YouTube channel is really just my own personal knowledge and the things that I have observed. But that doesn't mean that I'm always right about everything, because I'm not. And I make a lot of mistakes too. And often the knowledge that I share with you is because I've made these same mistakes. But your perspective is valuable too, just as valuable as mine, if not more valuable in your own life, of course. So take it with a grain of salt. Always take what works for you and leave the rest. I'm afraid to plan this year because I'm afraid I might have to trash the plan and change direction. So when you know that you have something potentially coming up, or even just intuitively you feel that there's a shift coming up, or you're just afraid that if you commit to something and you can't follow through, what will happen? There are a couple of options. You can create, like if it's that you know there might be a move coming up and there's some uncertainty, like you have a husband in the military, or you yourself are in the military, or you're losing a job, or you know that there's like some other event that might be happening, then you could create a contingency plan. So you create one plan as if your life is staying the same as it is now. And then you create another plan for what you hope to accomplish if things get fruit basket turnovered in your life. Another thing that you can do if you really feel like this yearly strategy or looking further out is causing you too much stress, is you could just plan 1 month at a time and say, I'm not going to worry about how many books get done this year, because not everybody needs to know it. Like, that's my son. I don't know if you guys could hear that. They're probably like, she's been on too long. So it's okay if you don't want to do this. If you're like, this stresses me out, it's okay. Just write as much as you want to write in January and see where you are. And then look ahead to February and say, okay, this is what I'm going to try to do in February, and just plan it one step at a time and you'll be fine. And that might be the most successful thing for you. So just ask yourself, do I need this? Is this going to help me? Or would I rather just look at January and then go from there? And that's fine too. Kathleen, I'm not a writer, but I'll use this to plan my study. Yay. Welcome, welcome. Or your edits went so poorly, your sense of time is screwed. Yeah. And you know, every book can be different. So obviously book 12 of my series has been so much more difficult to write this year and last year and so on, because there's been so much else going on. Plus writing book 12 of a fantasy series is harder than writing book 1 of a brand new series for me. And so every book might be a little bit different. And sometimes you might have to work on kind of building your confidence back up. And that's okay too. Like, you have to meet yourself where you are. And so start working on those confidence building things. And maybe a deadline isn't going to be the right thing for you. Rachel, quick question. How do you recharge when you feel drained during the writing process and you're behind schedule? That's a good question. So if you have some kind of deadline, which I have been in this position many times before, where it's like, okay, I've got this deadline. I've promised something to readers, and so I need to get it done, but you're behind and you're also drained. Some of the best things that I do is sometimes you can't take like entire weeks off. And so you have to focus on the micro moments. You have to think, where can I take time throughout every single day to actually give myself a few moments of peace? And what gives you peace or refills the well may be different from what refills my well. But it's like, my husband knows very well at this point that if I am struggling and I need to refill the well, we're not eating at home. It's not happening. We're going to go out to dinner, and it doesn't matter if it's like IHOP or Applebee's. I don't care where. Like, I just want to go out. I need to get out of the house, and that can be helpful for me. Another thing is, if I'm on a deadline but I'm behind, is if I go to a coffee shop or I go and I sit somewhere that I can be out of the house, that can help too. Sometimes even if you're behind, taking a full day off to just game or sleep a little bit extra, take a bath. And sometimes it's like, my ice has melted now, but sometimes it's just like getting a really nice glass and like drinking something nice and going and sitting outside for an hour and just allowing yourself to not think about your story for a little while. That can really help. But sometimes you're so drained, you need bigger things, like you need therapy, or you need true meditation, or you need a spa day or something else. But for me, the micro moments is really what has helped me get through the past 3 months that have been extremely busy for me and my family. I don't have days off. but I have hours off, and I can take that time and I can try to refill the well as best I can. So for me, it can be YouTube watching, it can be getting a coffee, it can be going out to dinner, it can just be sitting on the floor and playing with My Little Ponies with Evie, which always makes me laugh and is fun. It can be running around outside with the kids or taking a walk. Physical activity helps me so much, even though I resist it as if it were going to kill me. It can be helpful. So stuff like that. All right, let's see. Any other questions? I've never gotten to the querying part yet, but does anyone possibly know where to look for to query your novel to or for traditional publishing by chance? I have no idea. So if anybody wants to jump in on that, I know there used to be things like Query Tracker and things like that, but I don't know how useful those are anymore. It's been like 13 years since I tried to query anything or thought about it. All right, let's see. I wrote the book in 7 weeks, but I've been editing for 10 months. Well, that can happen too. But sometimes that's just a matter of you need more knowledge on how to do the editing process, or it just takes you a lot longer to edit, and that's fine. Don't judge it just because I said most people or something like that. Like literally anything it can be normal. Is there a reason you prefer to edit the rough draft as soon as you finish it instead of starting the book in next book in a new series? When the rough draft of book 2 is done, then go back to edit book 1. So I like to, I always prefer to edit the rough draft right away. So if I finish book 2, I'm going to go back and edit book 2, and then I'm going to publish it before I usually start another project. And the reason I do that without taking a break or starting something different is because the way that my mind works, and I think I would love to talk to Becca Syme about this, about being strategic, is that I am already, as I'm editing, like as I'm working on that draft, my brain is already kind of filing away what needs to change. And I already know, and it's fresh in my mind, what things need to shift. And if I take 2 or 3 weeks break, or I go to write something else, I will lose that sort of puzzle pieces that I've been putting together in my brain. And I guess I could write it down, but there's just an urgency that I have of, okay, now I'm ready to go fix this. And it's very satisfying for me. It's that idea of like, I need to complete this project. Like it's not quite perfect. I got to do it. And I get really hyper focused until it's finished. And I love the editing process. So I want to get into it right away. Resources for finding cover artists. So there are Facebook groups that are really great. I think it's like Book Cover Marketplace or something like that. I have it linked in Publish and Thrive, but I don't think I've ever shared it here. So there are Facebook groups that you can find people that will be doing sales, or they'll be doing pre-made covers. Also, a really good resource if you're indie is to go to the books that are in your genre that you love and just look at the look inside on Amazon and see whose cover art they use. Most people will say their cover artist there. So that can be really good. And just asking around. And you can always also email authors and say, who did you use? I love your cover. And most of the time they will, if they have time, answer you. But there are also websites out there. So like 99 Designs. Fiverr, sometimes I would be a little bit careful of, because there's some people there that don't always follow the rules of what to use. But those are some of the best resources that I have found. So would you recommend KDP? So there's a difference between KDP and KDP Select. So it would take me hours to talk about those things. But yes, I mean, I think everybody that self-publishes should be in KDP. Now, whether or not you should be in KU is totally a personal choice. It's a genre choice. It's a marketing choice. But everybody, if you're going to publish as many places as you can, or at least if you're going to be exclusive, you would be exclusive to Amazon. I personally publish everywhere that I can get. So yeah, I would definitely recommend KDP. But whether or not you should be exclusive to KDP is just going to be your own personal choice. And there's a lot of reasons why you might choose or not. Do you feel you've gotten faster in the process? Just in the process of writing and editing, do you mean, Roseanne? I'll probably take one more question after this. I feel like I've gotten worse lately, but that is sometimes the ups and downs of the process. Is like the last few years I have struggled, but not because I'm not a good author or because my process has slowed. It's because I have been putting so much of my mental time and energy into teaching and YouTube, and also then had a baby right when I was started. I had just started YouTube and got pregnant at the end of that year. And so all of that has kind of eaten my creative brain. And so my process and goal for 2023 and really the second half of 2022 has been to rediscover how and find the balance of how I can manage how much time I'm teaching and giving to other people, but still save enough back for myself that I'm able to create. And that's part of why I'm choosing at this point not to do Publish and Thrive twice next year, because I've got to create space for myself to continue creating, because there's a part of me that's like slowly dying to just give. And I'm not saying that for guilt reasons. This has been my choice, but it's difficult to give so much of yourself and then still save enough for the creative process, because I feel like there's always more that I want to teach and more that I want to give, and I'm giving too much. So, but in terms of the actual process of plotting and things like that, every book is different. Publishing process is easy, at least. Thank God for that. Okay. There's so many questions here, and things like that. Sorry about the therapy comment, but it is true. It is true. It is true. Some of us, I mean, therapy is a wonderful thing, and we need to get rid of any kind of stigma around it, because it can be super helpful. Okay, let's see. Sorry, I'm looking for questions among all of these things. I see a lot of questions for people. Will the resources for Publish and Thrive be in digital format also? We'll see. There will not be as much workbook stuff in the new version of Publish and Thrive as there was before, because there will be more of a living document called an index that will all be digital. So, it won't necessarily be digital like iPad digital, but digital like spreadsheet digital. So more news on that to come. Okay, guys, I think we're just going to call it there. I appreciate you so much. I had a feeling it would go longer, because there's so much that goes into this process of planning, and you may want to add more steps. You may want to take some of these steps away, but it's truly my hope that everything we talked about today was helpful for you, was supportive for you, that you know that you are, part of a community here that will happily help you. If you have more questions, feel free to post them in the Heart Breathings writing community and get support there. I have a Discord server that, if it's not linked down below in today's stuff, you can find it over, if you go to youtube.com/Sarra Cannon, it's in the description of all of my videos over there. And we have a Hearties Hangout section, and we have a Publish and Thrive section, and all of that stuff. Also, just to let you know, for those of you that are on the more woo-woo side, I do have a mini course that is coming out. It's already up for sale. But Monday is when all the videos go live. That is called Manifest Your Best Year. So this is for those of you that are on the kind of more like law of attraction, new age side of things, where I'm going to be sharing my process of manifestation for the new year. So if that speaks to you anyway, I would love for you to come join us. That course is $47 if you would like to come join over there. You can find it at heartbreathings.teachable.com. I did not link it down below, but if you go to heartbreathings.teachable.com, you will find it. Or if you go to heartbreathings.com, there's a courses tab that will take you over to that page. But I hope you feel supported. I hope you feel excited for the year to come. If you decide that you do like working in sprints or task blocks, I highly recommend that you come join our Heart Breathings writing community, because we have sprinters who are sprinting all the time, almost every single day of the week. We have double down days, we have virtual retreats, and possibly in 2023 or early 2024, we're going to have an in-person retreat here in the Dallas area. So lots of fun stuff. So come join us. We work in sprints, and it's super helpful to get your writing goals accomplished. So come join us there as well. There's a link down below. And I just love you guys. And yes, that course is going to be up. It's just going to be what they call evergreen. It'll just be up all year. You can take it anytime. All right, you guys, all my love to you. Thanks for joining me on this Saturday near the holidays. It means a lot. And if you're watching on the replay, thank you for that. And I forgot to do the giveaway. So, I guess we'll do it for whoever's still here. Okay, so if you want to enter the giveaway to either win the Happy Planner or the Erin Condren notebook, if you just want to leave an emoji or a comment, and then I'm going to give you just a second to comment here, and then I'll just randomly pick a winner. Can't believe I forgot to do that during the other stuff. And when it comes to the questions, I will take just a minute after this live stream is over, and I will put them up for you in the community tab as best as I can remember exactly what I said. And then I will alter this download and re-upload it sometime early next week. So, all right, I'm going to just kind of close my eyes and we're just going to choose somebody. All right, so we have Pamela. You are the winner of your choice, either a happy planner or an Erin Condren notebook. You can choose whichever one you want. Just send me an email at sarah@heartbreathings.com. Let me put it in the comments here so you know where to send. Also, you guys, nope, that's my personal email. Sarah@heartbreathings.com. There have been people in my comments lately that have been spamming people like, you've been shortlisted as a winner. Don't ever text someone on Telegram, you guys. It's going around all of YouTube, and I wish I could put a stop to it, so I apologize. But I did choose the winners of the Hobonichi and the Etta V earlier, so that went to Rose Without Thorn and Blue Heart Crochet. So if that is you, send me an email. And Pamela, send me an email and I'll get this out to you as soon as I can. All right, you guys, all my love to you. Merry Christmas if you celebrate. Happy holidays and stay safe. I will see you guys in Thursday's video next week. All right, bye.